Hello and welcome. This is rooflemonger, my friends. Today we're looking at a hands-on preview of the Capcom Fighting Collection 2. So Capcom was very generous in letting me get a bit of a hands-on with the game before its launch on May the 16th, and it's coming out on Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. And what's in the collection? Well, it's full of some of the best games Capcom has ever put out. Power Stone 1 and 2, Project Justice, the sequel to Rival Schools, Plasma Sword, the sequel to Star Gladiator, Capcom vs. SNK 1 and 2, definitely the superstars of the collection, and also Capcom Fighting Jam. And as you can see here, you can play as the Japanese or English versions of the game. So at this point, this isn't exactly Capcom's first rodeo. They're getting pretty proficient at this whole fighting game collection thing. We had the original Capcom Fighting Collection, which was very Darkstalkers focused. We had the Marvel vs. Capcom Collection, and now this one, while featuring many games, I think it's very fair to say kind of the standout is Capcom vs. SNK 1 and 2, as the games and all the games in the collection have been modernized with all the fixins. Now, one of the big things is every game will have online play and rollback netcode, although unfortunately for the duration of this preview, I didn't have the opportunity to test out the rollback, as it's sort of like a limited player base in the preview, and I just couldn't get anyone else to match up with. But in previous collections, the online play has been very, very good, and I'm very assured that's going to be much the same here. But one of the best things about this collection is it gives all these older games that, released a very long time ago, very modern training modes. The things you take for granted these days weren't always a given back in the day, right? So now, across all the games, we got a lot of fun things, including things like hitbox viewers. For myself, it was actually a little enlightening. CVS2 is a game I put in a lot of time over the years, but I've never actually seen the hitboxes on some of these moves. Like being able to see the fabled priority button back when priority meant something very different. That's kind of neat. So just adding proper modern training across all the games on top of, online play and rollback netcode, that's actually fantastic. And of course, just like the other collections, very much a love letter to the games themselves. So much official art, so much of like the original arcade marquees, and a lot just to make the play experience a little bit better than it was, because, some of these games are kind of cheap, right? So we do have, like, say, a quick save feature, so that's really handy. Some of these games as well, being older games, and, they read the input buffer a little bit differently, it was difficult to do some moves, right? So we also have easy specials and supers as well. So if you struggle for whatever reason, it's an option available to you. Now, if you're worried, this is a little cheating or it's a little bit cheap, like, hey, maybe, right? But it does at least force the game to do all the inputs, including things like the Raging Storm, as you see. So if you suck at the Raging Storm motion, and if you're younger than 30, it's probably nothing you've ever really had to worry about before, right? So you can just kind of hit a button, go from there. One thing I do like, though, since it forces the game to be honest about the inputs, even though it's technically a one-button super, it means things like Zangief's 720. It can't do it normally. Zangief will jump before it goes live. So you have to buffer it behind like a dash or a jump or between a button, just like a good boy or girl. It's not easy operation, just easy supers. And of course, customization is a big part of the collection for just a wide variety of things, especially just how you want it to look, right? So like other games and other collections, you can do stuff like, the side art, because you want to keep the original resolution of the game, your various filters, all sorts of different anti-aliasing, because, people are very particular about that kind of stuff, so you can have it exactly the way you like. One thing I really enjoy, though, is you can also change the actual resolution. Since so many of these games are 3D based, use 3D models, all that kind of stuff. So you can actually have a higher than regular resolution to make everything look crisper than it normally ever did on the original hardware. So that's actually a very nice triumph of making it a modern collection. Effectively, everything about the collection is just about customization, easy use. Like even very easy to understand move lists that are kind of universal across all the games, so everything just makes sense. Now, just to talk about some of the games themselves, because obviously the games are the big selling point. Wasn't allowed to cover everything for the preview event, maybe more when we get closer to launch, but obviously one of the big ones, besides, CVS, right, is Power Stone 2, right? Power Stone, a very amazing franchise. If you never got to play it back in the day, it's a real treat. It's kind of hard to classify exactly what genre of fighting game you would call this. Like, it's fair to call it, I guess, a platform fighter. as given some of the stage have like actual platforms and like actual platforming that you actually need to do while you're just kind of beating the crap out of each other. And if you are unaware of the franchise, generally played best with 4 players. So the mayhem is at its maximum. And like a real platform fighter, you better believe items are always on. We ain't coddling weakness by turning this stuff off here. We're very much about just all the madness that's going on at all times. Now, given that Power Stone 2 came out about 25 years ago now, a good deal of you watching have probably never played the game. It is a real treat though. Like, is it the most deadly serious competitive fighter? Probably not. But the Power Stone games are just fun, and that's kind of what matters the most. Just the mayhem of everything going on. There's always something happening, and of course, given that it's 4 players, that's the way it's designed to be played, there's always just something happening, and they're just fun games. Another game in the collection, Alpha 3 Upper, is a bit more of an oddball of a game. For the vast majority of people in the fighting game community, if you played Alpha 3, and you know, lots of people have played Alpha 3, they probably played proper, regular, vanilla, if you will, Alpha 3. Alpha 3 Upper was a very limited release in comparison. Like, one of the selling points, besides, you know, balance changes and all that, is a different roster. Like, hey, this game has T-Hawk, right? Regular Alpha 3 definitely does not have T-Hawk. And we got other characters like DJ, we got Fei Long, they're only in this version of the game. The thing about Alpha 3 specifically, though, it has so many staggered releases and each one has kind of its own roster. Like later on, they would have the Game Boy Advance version of Alpha 3. That had Mackie and Eagle, who are not in this version. There was the PSP version that had Ingrid. Like, it's very different. There's so many versions of Alpha 3. It's hard to get everything in one place, kind of. But still, this is a great version of the game. It's a rarer version of the game because, you know, people like DJ, Fei Long, T-Hawk, not in the Alpha 3 most people played over the years. So it's cool to see a different branching evolution of the game. We got Project Justice, that is the sequel to Rival Schools. And definitely a game of the era, I think it's fair to say, but very unique. There's nothing really like the Rival Schools franchise. There's a very interesting story mode where you have pre-selected teams based on your high school and the various characters. That's a bit more like narrative / story based than the average fighting game arcade experience. And then there's the whole team aspect, right? It's not exactly Marvel vs. Capcom or nothing, right? But you have your team, your characters can do various moves, and one of the more fun things about it is just the various tag team supers, where depending on who your partners are, you get all sorts of different moves, different tag moves that could be like healing based, as you're seeing here. Could be much more, you know, normally offensive based. Like, there's just lots of combinations, lots of fun ways to do things based on the team system. And of course, it's a 3D-ish fighting game. You know, there is a 3D plane, and it's not exactly Soul Calibur or nothing, but it may do for what it was at the time. So why Project Justice and not Rival Schools, or at least why not both? Well, my understanding is due to the nature of the collection, it basically comes down to the board that you're emulating. This and also Plasma Sword are on the Naomi board, whereas their older games in the series were not, so therefore these get emulated for the collection, the other games not so much. But still, once again, very glad it's here. Now, for the collection, as far as it goes, Plasma Sword was definitely kind of like a standout to me. Personally, I have never played Plasma Sword or the original Star Gladiator ever. Like, ever. Like, I know of the games, mostly because Hayato, the main character, if you will, is in Marvel vs. Capcom 2. But yeah, I went into this pretty cold. I'm looking at the roster, and I didn't really know what's going on. Then I saw this kind of like monkey man looking dude, and I'm like, oh, this is probably my guy. And then turns out he's got a command grab on him, right? So Monkey Man's got the command grab, and then like, okay, the game has steered me correctly. It's nice to go into something completely cold and be rewarded for your initial instinct. So that, I don't know, I had fun with that alone. He's got a cool axe, right? It definitely plays like an early era 3D fighter, right? So there is proper like movement into the foreground and background, and you can avoid moves that way. For the most part, like hitboxes mostly seem like what you see is what you get. So if you dodge it out of the way, you dodge it out of the way, simple as. Once again, it definitely feels like a product of the time, and there's nothing wrong with that. My experience with the franchise is unfortunately very limited, so if there's any big-time Star Gladiator fans in, you know, watching the video, hit up the comments, right? Sell people on Star Gladiator on Plasma Sword, because I would like to know what makes this game go, because for me, I had fun with it. Like, I like that you can hit people when they're down after the round. That's always kind of a selling point for me. But it was definitely the biggest question mark of everything in the collection to me going in, and all I can say is I had fun mashing around. And if you can have fun, that's a selling point in and of itself to me. And then moving into sort of the main events here. So Capcom versus SNK 1 and 2. People definitely know Capcom versus SNK 2 specifically. It's one of the legendary fighting games of all time. CVS 1, though, in comparison, is a bit more of a forgotten game. You know, it wasn't quite there yet. There's a lot of interesting things about it for sure, but it wasn't the polished product it would become. Like, there is a groove system, but there's only two grooves, Capcom and SNK. So if you pick Capcom, it's more like a Capcom character, SNK more like an SNK character, simple enough. There is the ratio system, but it's fixed by character. So every character has their own ratio, like Iori is just ratio 4 flat out. Geese Howard or Sagat, ratio 3, done. They can only ever be that ratio. So there's a bunch of characters by ratio. A lot of the ratio 1 characters like Joe, Yuri, Dan are kind of like more of the joke characters. So you didn't get to choose like you would in CVS 2, right? But that's also part of the charm of the game is the characters are very fixed in their way. They are at a very set power level. If you pick Geese, he's always going to be ratio 3. Therefore, you know Geese is always going to be strong. End of story. If anything, CVS 1 is interesting just to see how CVS 2 got where it was. But one thing it does debatably much better than CVS 2 is the presentation. Like stuff like going into a new stage. This is a very strong presentation. The stages in CVS 1 are beautiful and just outright fantastic. And also very certainly not afraid to play up, certain, legacy elements of various characters and various stages over time, especially some of the more iconic characters of the games. All I can really say is it's certainly one of the more interesting titles on the collection, just for what it led to in the future. And then, of course, there is Capcom vs. SNK 2, for many people, the absolute selling point of the collection itself. Once again, just one of the most legendary fighting games of all time, period. So many characters, and of course, scored by the fact that there is the groove system, 6 grooves, and each way you have a groove wildly changes how you play the game. So every character, obviously being their own unique character, is a big deal, but then when you add the groove system, it just makes everything so varied. Then, of course, the team building aspect with the ratio system. You could have one character if you want to go ratio 4, or you could have a team of 2 or a team of 3. However you want to do it, although you should probably do it ratio 1, ratio 1, ratio 2. Add in all the modern fixins we talked about, a nice dose of rollback netcode, lots to love here. If you don't know much about the game, years ago I made a video just about how awesome Capcom vs. SNK 2 is, so check that out. I'll link that in the video description for you. Like, I don't know really how to sell the game at this point. Like, it's just simply one of the best fighting games ever made. Done. Full stop. If you've never played it before, you owe it to yourself to try it out. That's really all I can say right now. There is a core element of the game, though, I do want to talk about, and that, of course, is that naughty roll canceling. So, many grooves feature a roll, and it's like the King of Fighters style roll, and it's very invincible, and you can use it to get around, all sorts of various projectiles, strikes, all the kind of stuff, just like you would in King of Fighters. That's perfectly fine. The problem with roll canceling is this, is you can take a roll and apply its properties to any move. So notice here Terry's doing Power Wave, right? Power Wave's not projectile invincible, that's for sure, but the roll is. And you can see him just barely start up a roll before going into Power Wave, making the Power Wave invincible. This is absolutely a glitch, 100%, but it's a glitch that became important to the game's competitive life over the years, so they left it in. In fact, they made it easier than ever. So, as we mentioned, this is a modern game, so it lets you do things modern games do, like set button macros. In fact, it lets you macro specific moves, like a singular specific move to a singular specific character if you want. Sure, whatever, right? But yeah, it lets you do various macros because it's a modern game now, right? And one of those is light punch, light kick, aka roll. So the thing about roll canceling is it's normally pretty difficult because it's a very small window to do it, right? You have to do whatever move you're doing, and right before you complete the move, you roll, and it's a very short frame window. But now that you can macro roll to a single button press, you can effectively plink the button and the actual button you want to hit, making the actual roll cancel and getting those invincibility frames easier than it's ever been. It's not free per se, right? But the difficulty, the execution barrier, making it a single button press definitely makes it a lot easier. So basically the idea is they're going to be bringing roll cancels to the common man, effectively. And if that still sounds weird and hard, don't worry, just play K-Groove. That's what I do, right? I'm not here to worry about roll canceling. I'm here to work easy, not hard, and K-Groove is that. K-Groove is super top tier, by the way. And it's easy for babies like me. And while we got our boy Raiden on the screen now, they did remove his sprite inversion glitch, unfortunately. Well, fortunately, because I was going to go abuse it online if they didn't. Most of the glitches seem to be pretty intact. This one specifically, though, is gone. Like, he literally flips your sprite over. And if you want to learn how to do it, I'll link this video in the video description. Just won't work in this specific build in the game. That's fine. It's probably for the best, because it's not that hard to do. But yeah, overall, I got to give the collection thumbs up from my time with it. It's a bunch of classic games, a bunch of games that definitely need to survive into the modern day, especially the Power Stone games. This isn't like CVS2. Even if you've never played CVS2, if you're watching this video, I'm sure you've heard of it, right? I bet there's a lot of you who've never even heard of Power Stone. These games were an absolute treasure, so I'm glad they're brought back with the care that they deserve. And with Power Stone 1 and 2 and CVS, Capcom vs. SNK 1 and 2, that's already amazing by itself. That's a sale right there. Everything else past that is just a straight bonus. So as with my time with the preview of the game, all I can really say is, hey, Capcom, as far as the collections go, kind of hit another home run. They're really good at this collection thing. They're really figuring it out. The games are quality. Their remastering and brought back to the modern day is done very well. And all the little features, gimmicks, and gigas that have been added to the game are all just great, really. So all I can say is recommend it. Once again, it's coming out later next month, so it's going to be a little while just yet. Going to be May the 16th, and once again on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. And hey, maybe check it out. Well, that said, my friends, that is the end of the video. So thank you very much for watching. Hope this video has found you well, and go out and play some fighting games.
Yeah.